Something is unfolding beneath the still and quiet surface. And if you have been sensing it recently, it is not your imagination at all. A final, weighty decision is slowly forming within their heart. And somehow, your presence is deeply woven into it. On the outside, they may appear calm, distant, or emotionally detached. But a truth they once avoided has grown far too heavy to ignore any longer. This is not only about missing you, it is about what your connection awakened within them and forced them to face. If you are sensing this final shift taking place right now, you are not wrong. They are standing at a powerful crossroads, and every direction they consider somehow leads them back to you. For a long time, they tried to distract themselves with routine noise, work, pride, and emotional distance, believing that silence would slowly weaken their feelings. But some connections do not fade so easily. The more they tried to suppress it, the more their inner world began to treat it as something meaningful and unresolved. Now they are looking back, questioning the story they convinced themselves was true for so long. One side of them feels drawn to you with an undeniable force, while the other side resists, because accepting this truth requires deep honesty and the release of old defenses that once kept them safe. They are finally sitting with that truth, wondering why your memory continues to return in quiet moments, and why no one else has ever truly replaced you. This is the heavy space just before clarity arrives, where the mind can only resist for so long before everything begins to break apart. If they return, it will be because they realized that a connection like yours does not come twice in a lifetime. And if they choose to walk away, it will never mean that you were lacking in any way. It will simply mean they were not ready for the level of honesty and inner transformation that loving you required from them. That is why your role now is not to chase them, not to force anything, and not to try to control what happens next. Let truth unfold naturally, in its own time. Let time reveal what words could not fully express before. What is happening within them carries real depth and weight. It is not a passing thought that will disappear quickly. It is a full internal conflict that continues to grow. On one side, there is an emotional pull toward you, filled with memory, warmth, longing, and a deep sense of belonging that feels rare and significant. On the other side, there is an old protective voice shaped by past pain, disappointment, and the fear of being hurt again. That voice tells them to stay guarded, to remain distant, and to protect themselves no matter what. These two forces are colliding within them, and the pressure is becoming harder to ignore with each passing day. They may try to hide within everyday routines. They may keep themselves busy with many distractions. They may act as though none of this matters anymore. But the more they push it down, the more it rises back to the surface. Because the real struggle was never outside of them. It has always existed within their own heart and mind, and that is why the next step carries such importance for their future. You became a turning point in their life without either of you fully realizing it at first. Even if it was not clear in the beginning, something about this connection challenged the walls they had built over time to protect themselves. It touched a version of them that existed beneath control, beneath appearances, and beneath all the careful ways they learned to stay safe. Now they are facing a choice that cannot be avoided forever. They can remain within the limits of who they have always been, or they can step into an unfamiliar version of themselves. That new version requires courage, vulnerability, and emotional risk that feels unfamiliar to them. This inner struggle is exhausting them deeply. It shows itself in the inconsistency you have felt, the push and pull, the shifts between closeness and distance, and the moments when they seem ready to move forward, followed by sudden withdrawal. This is not always manipulation or intentional games. Sometimes it is what happens when someone desires a connection, but fears the transformation that naturally comes with it. As this internal pressure grows, it begins to burn away old illusions they once believed. They can no longer convince themselves that you were just a passing moment in their life. They are being pushed to see you with greater clarity than ever before. More importantly, they are being pushed to see themselves in a new light. Old memories are returning with stronger intensity. Shared emotions are resurfacing with deeper meaning than before. Every silence now carries more weight. Every absence feels heavier within their heart. This discomfort is necessary because real decisions are not formed through avoidance. They are formed when confusion begins to clear, and the heart is no longer willing to remain hidden beneath fear. And that clearing is happening now, even if everything still appears quiet on the surface. There comes a moment when uncertainty becomes too heavy to carry, and they are steadily approaching that point. Not because something dramatic has changed externally, but because the mind cannot remain divided forever in this way. For too long, they tried to minimize their feelings. They told themselves it was not that important. They convinced themselves it would pass quickly and did not require action. But something deeper within them now understands that this is no longer true. That awareness is bringing everything back to the surface with intensity. Emotions this deep do not disappear. They grow in silence. They evolve in absence. They wait until they can no longer be denied. Now those emotions are returning in waves, late at night, or in quiet pauses during the day. They are noticing how naturally their thoughts drift back to you again and again. How your presence lingers like a soft background hum in their life. Distractions are no longer enough to erase the feeling that something meaningful is missing. Your absence has played a powerful role in this process. By stepping back, you left them alone with their own thoughts. That silence became a mirror, forcing them to face what was missing: the comfort, the connection, the emotional safety your presence once provided. When they truly felt the shape of what was gone, they stopped questioning whether it mattered. Instead, they began comparing your depth to the emptiness of everything else. Inside them, fear and desire are now colliding with full force. One side pulls them toward you with warmth and familiarity, while the other side warns them to stay guarded. Yet for the first time, their desire is beginning to grow louder than their fear. This creates an intense inner storm of hesitation and longing. They remain caught in this space, not because they do not care, but because they are navigating a deep internal battle. This is no longer just about a relationship. It is about identity and choosing who they want to become. While they may appear distant or unsettled right now, this is not necessarily the end. They are realizing that staying in the middle ground, neither fully present nor completely gone, has cost them their peace. They are being forced to take responsibility for what they truly feel. The hesitation that once protected them has now become a prison. The walls they relied on are beginning to crack under pressure. They are remembering the times they stayed silent when they wanted to speak. They are recalling the moments when pride replaced honesty. The gap between their feelings and their actions is closing. Real change is no longer just possible. It is becoming necessary. When a person is left alone with their thoughts long enough, truth begins to rise above the noise. That is exactly what is happening now within them. This shift is not coming from outside influence, it is coming from within. They can no longer hide behind uncertainty. The connection has become too present in their quietest moments. It returns when everything slows down. It appears when they try to focus elsewhere. And this repeated return is changing their understanding. What once felt random now feels meaningful. What once felt confusing now feels purposeful. They are beginning to realize that they were not only missing you, they were missing the version of themselves that existed when they were with you, a version that felt more open, more honest, and more emotionally alive than they had been in a long time. And the pain of being far removed from that version of themselves has grown too intense to ignore any longer. This marks a deeply important turning point in their personal journey. So understand this clearly, without any doubt. When someone begins to miss who they became with you, the question is no longer whether the connection truly mattered. The real question becomes whether they are willing to return to the truth it revealed inside them. As this awareness continues to deepen, the outer world slowly loses some of its power to fully distract them. They can remain busy with different activities, surround themselves with people, or immerse themselves in work, goals, plans, and constant noise. But beneath all of that movement, there is still one quiet current leading them back to the same place, to you, to what was once felt, and to what still remains unfinished between you. This is the stage where the protective ego begins to loosen its grip little by little. The ego seeks distance and control at any cost, believing it ensures safety. But a deeper part of them is starting to realize that complete disconnection carries its own form of pain and emptiness. And sometimes that emptiness becomes heavier than the fear of closeness and vulnerability. So now they are carefully weighing two possible futures: the safe, familiar life they know, along with its emotional emptiness, or the unknown path that carries risk, but also holds the possibility of something real and meaningful. For the first time, that possibility is beginning to feel more valuable than the protection they once depended on. That is where courage starts to grow. Not when fear disappears entirely, but when truth becomes more important than fear itself. With that awareness comes a quiet stillness that begins to settle their restless energy. The pressure is still present, but it feels different now, more steady, more focused, and more honest than before. They are no longer resisting every feeling that rises within them. They are starting to allow those feelings to speak more clearly. They are beginning to accept that what they feel is real and valid, and that acceptance brings a quiet sense of peace into their heart. Not because everything has been resolved completely, but because the inner conflict is slowly transforming into clarity and direction. They are standing at the edge of an old version of their life, looking toward a new possibility that feels unfamiliar. And the only bridge between these two states is a single, honest choice they must eventually make. This is the moment of transparency and deep self-reflection. The silence that once protected them is now reflecting them back to themselves with honesty. It is showing them where pride blocked love, where fear blocked truth, and where avoidance created unnecessary distance. They are revisiting past conversations, memories, glances, and quiet pauses. But now they are seeing them with greater maturity, stronger awareness, and deeper emotional understanding than before. They can recognize where fear influenced their past decisions. They can also see the value of what was naturally trying to grow between you. This is not only about regret or looking backward. It is about rearranging what truly matters in their life. The things they once placed above connection, such as image, control, safety, and emotional self-protection, are starting to feel empty compared to the depth of something genuine and real. And something else is shifting within their heart as well. Empathy is growing steadily. They are beginning to feel what their distance may have felt like from your perspective. They are starting to understand the emotional weight you carried while they stood back in uncertainty. That understanding softens a person from within. It humbles them gently and makes it harder to hide behind emotional coldness. Because once responsibility enters the picture, everything begins to change in meaningful ways. They are no longer only reacting out of fear. They are beginning to consciously shape what they will do next with greater awareness. And when someone reaches this stage, everything becomes more serious in a quiet and profound way. Not dramatic or loud, but deeply thoughtful and intentional. Because now they understand that whatever happens next will reveal something truthful about the kind of person they choose to become. The final layers of hesitation are beginning to fade slowly. Old thoughts of should and could are losing their hold. In their place, something stronger is forming inside, a sense of necessity that feels impossible to ignore. There is a growing feeling that they must acknowledge what is real between you. They must face the consequences of what they truly feel. They must stop wasting time in emotional paralysis that has been holding them back. Time itself is starting to feel different to them now, more valuable and less endless than before. They are realizing that staying stuck is also a choice, and often the most painful one in the long run. This clarity is not just in their thoughts. It is something they feel physically, like a quiet pressure in their chest. It appears in moments when they think about reaching out, speaking honestly, or taking real action. The unknown still brings fear, yes, but the familiar emptiness of staying disconnected is beginning to feel even more frightening. And that is why movement is drawing closer with each passing day. Words that were once held back are beginning to rise naturally toward the surface. Actions that once felt impossible are becoming harder to avoid. Because once truth reaches this level of strength, silence no longer feels safe or comfortable. Instead, it begins to feel unbearable. It is important to remember this clearly. Whatever they choose to do next will not come from a random impulse or sudden thought. It will come from a long, difficult, and honest process of finally facing themselves without excuses or hiding. That is why this moment carries so much importance in their life. It is not a passing feeling that will simply fade away. It is a deep reckoning that changes a person gradually at first, quietly at first, and then all at once, when the time finally comes. At the center of everything, one undeniable truth stands strong. You changed something within them in lasting ways. You reflected a part of their potential back to them clearly. You became a mirror, a catalyst, and a steady presence during a time when they felt lost within their own uncertainty. Even in silence, your impact remained with them. That is why they are now reaching a deeper level of awareness than before. The noise is slowly fading. The path ahead is becoming clearer over time. The question is no longer whether this affected them deeply, but when they will fully act on what they now understand within themselves. Layer by layer, their confusion is falling away, revealing a quiet and grounded certainty that can no longer be ignored. They now realize that trying to control their feelings only made them stronger, and pretending not to know the truth is no longer an option. If you have been sensing this deep shift, trust that intuition fully. Something very real is reaching its final stage within their heart, pushing them to decide whether they are ready to live from a place of truth rather than fear. Your role in this moment is simple. Stay centered, stay calm. Resist the urge to chase what is already being brought into the light. Allow them to feel the full weight of your absence, the true value of your presence, and the real cost of pretending they feel less than they actually do. The person who once hesitated is approaching a point they can no longer move back and forth across. Their inner conflict is slowly turning into clarity and purpose, step by step. Soon, one undeniable truth will rise above every excuse that came before it, revealing exactly who they are choosing to be. When life finally demands courage and honesty, when that moment of clarity fully arrives, it will show that the quiet before the truth was simply the loudest and most necessary part of the entire journey. If this message connects with what you have been sensing, hold on to it with quiet hope. Trust the timing of this unfolding, because the next chapter of this connection is much closer than it appears right now.